Hey everyone, I'm Dave Rubenstein, Editor-in-Chief of ST Times. We're here at the Devops Enterprise Summit with a couple of fine folks from Electric Cloud. Yvonne Matur here is the Electric Flow Product Manager, and AndersWallgren is the Chief Technology Officer. They both did some really interesting presentations yesterday, and I guess we'll start with you, Yvonne. You talked about surviving the script apocalypse. I'm kind of curious what that was all about.
Yeah, it sounds a little dire, but it's a situation we see a lot of our customers in as they're getting started on thinking about, improving their DevOps successes. What is their current situation where they've started with maybe a couple of scripts and it's just grown into this mountain of spaghetti scripts that are hard to parse, hard to understand what's going on, and you don't have a lot of the pieces in place you need to really achieve your DevOps success. And so talked a little bit about the pains that people see in that, not having visibility, not having shared knowledge across your organization, because it might be just one person who's owning those scripts who has that understanding. And so what happens if that person decides to leave,
Right.
And so I got to talk a little bit about my experiences with our customers, actually me being given the directory to wade through those scripts and find what is the actual command line that's used to run, to deploy to the app server, because no one in the team I was working with had that knowledge. So from there, just moving to some best practices, for taking stock of those scripts and starting to create your value stream map, whiteboarding, figuring out where to start, and then best practices around, in general, when you're starting to, from there, to create a DevOps release pipeline, what are the things to take into account?
Right. So where would automation come into play?
Yeah, it definitely does. Some people think scripts are automation or is enough automation, but most of the time these scripts are going to be kind of piecemeal, where you have automation. I'm doing my configuration here, I'm doing, an app deployment here, I'm running some tests here, but, what is really tying it all together and providing that fully automated process, and also giving the value of visibility into what's going on and auditability to go back. So, recommending having that full pipeline visibility that gives you more control over what's happening, and hopefully choosing a solution that solves some of the problems for you, so you're not really having to script every single piece and maintain all of that.
So you mentioned the value stream. So is that something people should be thinking about before they get into architecting a DevOps solution, or it seems to me that would be the driver?
Yeah,
where's the value?
Yeah, definitely. Understanding where are the pieces that I really need to initially start with, bring into my automation. So definitely start with that. So everyone is on the same page also of what is your process, how do you get your value.
Yeah. So maybe for people who aren't familiar with it, I don't know, Anders, maybe you might want to take this on.
Sure.
How are you defining the value stream, and what does that mean to organizations?
There's definitely sort of a formal definition of value stream, which I don't think I'm qualified to give, but I'll give you my version of it. It's very simple to me, right? It at some point, your customer is going to use your product and get value out of that, right? So that's kind of the end point. Now, how do we get to there from I have some code that I just checked in, right? And it's really about, how do you get from that point to the point where the customer is getting, value or entertainment or whatever it may be. And there's a lot of things that have to happen for that to be reliable, repeatable, and, all of those kinds of things. And value stream mapping in particular is really just about, look, one of the ways I explain it, and it's very contextual, and you probably had to have grown up in the U.S. in the 70s to understand my example, but Schoolhouse Rock, right? How a bill becomes a law. One of my favorite Schoolhouse Rock episodes ever, and it was really just, literally, there was the bill, the little character, and it's got to go this, it's got to be passed by the Senate, it's got to be passed by the House, and really that's kind of what you want to do for your software, right? How does your code become value, in the customer's hands? And so, put yourself in the code's point of view and what has to happen. And more importantly, what are you doing that you shouldn't be doing? What are you doing that's wasting time?
Definitely.
What are you doing that's introducing delays? What are you doing, what are you not doing that you should be doing? All of those kinds of things. And then once you get a little bit further down the road of that, now you can start to look at, okay, we had a problem there. What are we not doing that we should be doing to make sure that problem never happens again?
Right.
You know, those kinds of things. And then you start to edit. And to me, anyway, it's always easier to edit something than to create something from scratch. So it's kind of getting to that point is pretty valuable.
So folks watching this, the big takeaway would be you were a big fan of Schoolhouse Rock back then.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
what I had. Anyway, so I also know you presented yesterday talking about 10 do's for successul DevOps. I don't know if we have time to get into all 10.
Yeah, and I actually ended up with way more, so I sort of just rewrote the presentation a little bit. And I, really what I made it about was sort of software architecture and why that matters, and then also software pipeline architecture and why that matters. And really, the meat of it was really sort of loosely coupled architectures are a very successful approach to scaling your application, to doing DevOps, to a lot of these kinds of things. But it's also very tricky, especially if you have an existing application that you have that's a little bit more monolithic. And so I actually got a little bit more technical than I usually do in terms of, here are some approaches to how you can, if you want to do 2 microservices and they're going to each own a piece of data, that today you can commit in a single transaction, but now there's no foreign key, they're not even in the same database. How do you do those kinds of things? And because that is the first roadblock people usually hit when they start to try to tease apart their monolith is, what do we do about the data, the state? Every architecture in the world that is, scalable and all of those kinds of things, it's the state is always the hard part, right? If we all were writing stateless applications, it would be trivial, right? There's really only 2 hard problems in computer science. Somebody once said, naming things and knowing when to flush the cache. Right. So it's all about the state. How do you manage that? And that is very tricky when you start doing microservices, because you don't want to do 2-phase commits and distributed transactions and all that kind of stuff. And that's where a lot of people get stuck. And if you have a monolithic application, it will be difficult to be as agile and as you can't get the velocity that you want to get. It's very difficult. So people are taking on pretty big challenges to do this.
One of the things that we've heard is that people who are trying to adopt DevOps just don't know where to begin. It's a very daunting challenge. And I was wondering, from your experience and customers you deal with, what do you advise them when they want to start on a DevOps transformation, and where would they start?
Yeah, it is a big question that we get, and it's daunting. And some people, I think, just that overwhelmingness of the problem kind of holds them back from getting started. And part of it is that value stream map we talked about, is just creating that and understanding your current processes and where you want to be. But starting small, some folks, we've seen people trying to bite off more than they can chew. They have 500 applications. Let's create a solution that will work for everything all at once, and let's make it scale right away. And it just gets out of hand. It's not easy to manage at that point, and really make sure you're focusing on the problem. So starting small, starting with one sample application, do a proof point, make a simpler pipeline, make sure you're able to deploy it. And then as you get that pipeline running properly through maybe a couple of environments, you iterate from there and add more to the pipeline itself, more of the checks, more of the testing, more of the gates you want to put in place, and then start to take that pipeline and see how you can make it more abstract away some of the details, make it more parameterized, so it can be more common across your applications, but at least start with a small chunk so you can prove some success. And you want to win in the beginning also. Absolutely. Otherwise, if it's just this long road, ultimately people are going to ask, what are you spending all your time on? Where is the value?
Yeah. Is there a fear that people can overplan and then just just never get anything going?
Don't use waterfall approaches to your DevOps transformation. be agile in your DevOps transformation. Don't boil the ocean. Don't try to do it all at once. Those sort of big bang kind of things never work. I don't think I've ever seen it be successful. You can't leave the office on Friday doing one kind of way of doing things and come in Monday and be completely different. It doesn't work that way. Start small. Start with something that's painful to you. Start with something that if you can solve it and it's relatively small and self-contained, you get a big win quickly, or even a small win quickly. That's important.
Right.
You know, that's important. And you're gonna have to do that again and again and again, because you know, it really is going to be sort of a roller coaster ride. You know, you're going to have some successes, you're going to have some problems, you're going to have some successes, you're going to have some problems, and it's you just have to keep at it.
Stay the course.
Yeah, and it's that whole thing of, you know, it's not the quality of the daily work that matters, it's the improvement in the quality of the daily work that matters. And as long as that is up and to the right, generally, you know, stay that course.
Yeah.
But where to get started is the number one most asked question I get. No matter what presentation I'm giving.
I could imagine.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, it's a you know, and it's a good question.
It is.
Right? I mean, you got to, you know, it's tough.
Yeah.
There's a lot of moving parts, and there's a lot of, you know, and especially if you're going to do DevOps kind of end to end, you know, from development all the way through to production. That's a lot of different organizations, a lot of different silos. There can be politics, there can be, you know, feelings and all of those things. So you know, you will get there in the end, but you're only going to get there one step at a time.
So it's more about the process than the tools, for instance. I think a lot of people have the concept, well, we can just go out and buy DevOps tools and be DevOps, but I really think it's more process.
I would agree, and I mean, we both make and sell DevOps tools, right? So you know, we have a vested interest in saying that tools are the solution, but they're not. Right.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, they're part of it.
They definitely are. Sure. They definitely are, and I'm a firm believer. We're both, I think, firm believers in that. Automation is absolutely key to this. You will not succeed without automation, but you will not succeed without culture changes. You will not succeed without thinking about how you do your process and those kinds of things either. You know, you can't buy DevOps in a box. Right. You know, you couldn't buy Agile in a box. You can't buy CD in a box. It just it doesn't work that way. If it was that easy, it wouldn't be a problem. You know, we wouldn't have conferences about it. We wouldn't, you know, it just, you know, that's just how it is.
Very good. All right. Well, I think we're about out of time, but thank you both so much, Anders and Yvonne from Electric Cloud. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your conference.
Thanks.
And we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Great.